We're going to break down the 7, because there's 7 pillars of communication, right? And you need to have an understanding and depth in each of these. So number 1, clarity and congruence, right? Most men do not express themselves clearly. They think they might be expressing themselves clearly, but they're kind of jumbling things together that don't necessarily mean very much when they're saying it, right? Their communication is confusing. Their communication is out of alignment with their non-verbal cues, their physical body, the way they're speaking, the tone of voice, the body language, the facial expressions. And what we don't realize, it creates confusion for people when they're talking to us. Because we're saying one thing and our face is doing another thing, and our body's doing another thing, and it just doesn't feel congruent. It feels uncomfortable. You've had that experience with people, right? Where you're like, oh, they're saying I'm fine, but actually their face is like they're looking around the room. They can't make eye contact. They're scrunched up. You're like, oh, this feels uncomfortable because I can't trust this person. This is what women feel, right? If you're like, I'm fine. Yeah, I've had a great day. You're an untrustworthy man, right? You're not trustable. Because you're saying one thing and your whole body's communicating another thing. And really, she's listening to your body, because that's the thing that really is communicating most of the real information. So you become untrustworthy, meaning that she doesn't believe that she can trust you later on. And she might not know this consciously, but in those moments, she doesn't feel the connection between the two of you because there's a disconnection internally within you. The next point, active listening. Now, this is about being fully there, listening to what's being said, right? Paying attention, not so you can respond or interrupt, but that you're showing you really heard what someone said, like listening intently. You know, this is something I really learned really deeply. I thought I was good at this before, right? I thought I was really good at this. Women always say I'm a great listener. But when I started to coach people, it took it to a new level, right? Because I was practiced and trained to listen to people. And I realized people don't listen to each other, right? We often listen to reply, listen to respond, listen to tell our opinion about what's being said, right? Or we, instead of listening to what's being said and the feeling underneath, we just jump to a conclusion, right? Or sorry, a solution and conclusion sometimes as well. Or worse still, we're listening, but we're feeding it all through our negative opinions of ourselves and her and women and men, whatever dynamic you're in, right? So you're thinking like, oh, she's telling me that she likes to go to parties. And you're like, oh, she's just another party girl who gets drunk every weekend and doesn't want anything serious. She didn't say that. She just she said she likes to she went to a party that she enjoyed. Or even in nonverbal cues, you're like, oh, she's looking away. That means she doesn't like me. God, I'm not good enough. Oh, another woman thinks I'm not good enough. And then you respond with that energy. And this is a massive problem in dating. People are filtering through people's actions and words through their own filter of meaning making, right? And then we respond to that. And then we wonder why the very thing we don't want to happen happens, because we've created the meaning in our heads like someone doesn't like us, someone doesn't care about us, they don't want us. And then we create that, we add that meaning, we start to push that person in that direction, right? And often what happens is the person you're dating, she's going to feel invisible, misunderstood, a lack of emotional connection because you're not feeling her. You're not noticing, you're not paying attention to the emotion and feeling underneath what she's saying. So if she's talking about her job and she might be like, you know, I really enjoy my job, but you're like, the body language is all off because you don't notice the body language or you don't notice the tone. You don't go, oh, actually, are you sure you enjoy your job? It's just like the way you're saying it and the way you're sitting, it doesn't really feel like that's really the case. And she might respond with like, yeah, actually, you're right. Like, I feel like I have to say I enjoy my job because I'm on a date. And then you might get into really beautiful conversation about how on dates we feel like we have to have this like perfect life, right? But if you're just hearing the words because you're too preoccupied with your own bullshit, right? Your fears, your worries, your anxieties, you lack presence, you're all up in the head, you've missed an opportunity for connection. And I see this time and time again with men, right? They're so in their head, fears, worries, anxieties, judgments about themselves and how they're not good enough, that they don't really listen to people. So they'll hear someone talk this whole thing and then they're just like, yeah, cool, that's nice. And you're like, wow, how did none of that impact you in a way that you had something reasonable to say? And this is one of the number one complaints that I hear from women is like, men are just really boring. They don't know how to have conversation. They don't know how to bring this depth. They don't know how to respond to things. You know, they make everything into a joke instead of like noticing the emotion that's present and feeling. And you do that with active listening. And this third one, right? Which is about emotional attunement and empathy. Again, this is something we really lack, but it's a communication aspect, emotional achievement and empathy, right? The ability to sense and understand and feel and respond to the feelings that are there, right? I know this is really connected to active listening for me, but it's like being attuned to the emotional context, subcontext, environment, and even like the sub context. Let me explain that. So someone who's talking about their day, right? And she's like, oh, I had to walk down this really dark alley and I was really a little bit concerned, blah, blah, blah. There's some concern there. But the sub context is that she's a woman walking down a dark alley, right? With centuries and millennia of pain and rape and sexual assault that have occurred to women. That's a sub context that as men, we're not always aware of, right? And I used a really obvious example there, but it could just be, you might say, oh, you've got nothing to worry about. London's really safe these days. And you've completely ignored the sub context, which means for her, she's like, this man doesn't really get what it's like to be a woman in this world. Okay, how safe am I with this guy? Because he's just discounting my, my sub context. The problem here for a lot of guys is they're missing all these cues, these emotional cues. Emotional cues are so important, right? Which can leave her feeling kind of uncomfortable, lacking in safety, like lacking in like this man is really present. Because what happens when men aren't present emotionally with a woman, we basically follow through on a script of what we want to do and what we desire, right? And ultimately, that's where rape happens a lot, in my opinion. A man is not connected to the woman in front of him. He's connected to his lust and his desire and what he wants. So he's transgressing boundaries. Yeah, because you're not emotionally attuned. So you become an unsafe man, right? And that might sound heavy, but it's important for a lot of you guys to realize this. Even if you are 5'2", you still land as an unsafe man, right? Because there's this like, what I could say, almost epigenetic feeling for a lot of women around safety and men, especially for women who've been through some really traumatic experiences, which is most women, right? So how does this problem kind of sound? It can sound like you kind of belittling someone else's feelings and emotions, receiving her maybe a distressing emotion, pain, difficulty or something like that. And instead of like acknowledging it, you just kind of gloss over it, or saying that maybe feelings are something's not a big deal when she's feeling it, right? Because you don't want to really stay there. Instead of acknowledging it as like a big deal. It's something that happens a lot, right? Or there's the opposite of this, which is over-identifying with the emotions. Her emotions are being overly reactive, which is one of the points we're going to talk about later. Being overly reactive and losing your own groundedness. Because there's a balance, right? There's a balance of like being grounded and present while also being aware of her emotions, right? So it's like, I'm aware that I'm sitting here, you're listening to me, blah, blah, blah. I've got emotions of nerves, worry, but I'm not engulfed by the nerves and worry that they are just taking up my whole experience. They're just there in the background that I've acknowledged them and I noticed them. They're not my whole experience. And I think that's something that as men, we often become very reactive because the emotion becomes our experience and we're no longer grounded even in ourselves, even in the moment. And then we just become over-identified with emotion and we become really reactive, right? Not responsive. Responding to someone's feelings like, oh, I noticed that actually, it sounds like that made you feel quite sad. Responsive. Reactive is, oh shit, what have I done to make her sad? I did something to make her sad. I need to change something. I need to do something. That's the conversation you have in your head. Reactive versus responsive. Noticing and so forth. And this can lead to you feeling jittery, erratic even, cold and shut down if you're not really responding to the feelings and emotions, and like you're not really on the same wavelength. You can go for a whole date and not really feel connected, no spark, no intimacy, like just this like almost like you're missing each other and you're have to explain things, a lot. Next one, number 4. Openness and vulnerability. So this is an important one, right? Because there's a lot of talk about openness and vulnerability, and maybe I would call this openness and revealing. Revealing is something that I've been talking about a bit on my Instagram and even on my newsletter. It's like this opening up to allow people to see the various layers of who you are, or opening up to allow someone into your inner world. So that's like expressing your inner world, your thoughts, your fears, your needs, your desires, your past, your future you desire, right? Without it having to be polished and perfect, right? Revealing. And what I see a lot of men do is they stick to like banter and jokes and small talk, like making things into a joke, like because there's an uncomfortability with going deeper. Kind of this belief around, you know, I need to be a man, I need to be like strong and unaffected by everything and like, you know, strong all the time. What's the other one I see around this not revealing is just like being really quiet and not really expanding on things. It's just like, oh, I talked about work, but didn't go any deeper about how I feel about my work, how the story about how I got into my work, the funny things that happen at work. And it just, the conversation feels boring and dry. Women relate to you as like nice, but often just really forgettable because they don't feel you. They don't have a depth of experience of you, right? And I guess the vulnerability, openness and revealing is also playfulness. Like revealing that there's a part of you that is playful, is joyful, has multiple layers to you, right? That is sarcastic, irrelevant, like fun and jokey, deep and really feeling, very introspective. And because you don't reveal these parts of you, she just feels you as being bland, boring and nice. And nice is not how you really want to be described. And I see this with so many guys I speak to because they're afraid of expressing themselves and being judged negatively. And really what happens when you don't express, you're judged far more negatively. Number 5, feedback and repair. Addressing issues with kindness and specificity, right, is really important. And this can probably be in like later stage of dating, but it can come up early on. Is like addressing issues with like kindness, specificity, not attacking character. And sometimes this happens in the mind, right? Someone's late and then you're like, they don't value me. They don't value my time. They don't think I am worthy. So they're wasting my time. That's this feedback you have in your head. And instead of addressing it, you suppress it. You don't say anything. You don't communicate it. So then you're being passive aggressive all the time. Because you don't have the balls, so we say, to have like the address a thing like, hey, you were late today again. You know, I know sometimes we're late. Like, is this a, you know, maybe there's a playful way to ask like, oh, what happened there? Did you lose your cat? Did you forget your homework? Right. And then we can have a conversation. They might be like, oh, this is something I'm actually often late. Or we keep arranging these dates that are really close to my work finishing time. So I just could do with another half an hour and that means I wouldn't be late. And you're like, oh, you see, we just address the issue instead of attacking their character in your head, or worse still, projecting that their actions have some meaning about you. Really important. This can cause defensiveness, right? If we start to think, you know, someone's attacking us or they are belittling us in some way, right? Shutting down. It can even cause people ghosting, right? Because there's a tension they want to address. Like maybe she asked you what you're looking for, where you want this to go. And you couldn't be in the feedback and go, oh, actually what I'm looking for is X, Y, and Z. So instead of, you shut down, you stop talking, you emotionally shut down, you know, your words stop coming, you don't know what to say, you become overthinking in the head. And then you might ghost because you don't want to have that conversation, or it might be in messages. This has happened. And what this really causes is that small conflict or small imagined conflict, imagined conflict never gets repaired and spirals and becomes a drama or becomes something you never talk about or that you disconnect because of, right? And let me think of some examples around this. Like I see this a lot with the avoidant men I work with. They're dating someone and they're unsure if it's the right person. I'm having doubts. I'm not sure. And instead of being like, hey, I'm really enjoying our time, but like I have this story in my mind that, you know, I'm not sure if we're right for each other because you like to do these things and blah, blah, blah. So instead of having that conversation, the small talk in their head, the conflict in their head arises and they just distance because they don't feel comfortable with opening up and revealing, previous point, opening up and showing emotion, right? And leaning into the discomfort of having a conversation, right? And you're starting to see, right, they're all really interlinked. If you really interlinked, right? You might say I'm good at one of these, but these are really interlinked. The next one, reactivity. This is a really big one, right? This is about your ability to kind of manage heightened emotions, anger, frustration, anxiety, stress, defensiveness, inadequacy, basically any emotion, and do so from a place that is present, this moment, here, now, rather than reacting from these kind of the ego state, the stories and negative beliefs about yourself. I'm not good enough. Standard one, I'm not good enough. There's a right way and I don't know how. I'm unlovable. I'm going to be abandoned. Those are the sort of kind of core ego stories or negative beliefs we hold about ourselves. And we're responding from those. Like if I'm responding to someone who I feel is criticizing me from I'm not good enough, that gets triggered, that I'm not good enough story, and I become defensive or I become counterattacking. Or it could be that I shut down because I'm like, oh my God, again, I've been proved to be not good enough. Or the story is like, no, I am good enough. And then we have to like push back and defend when in fact, maybe someone isn't even attacking us. Maybe they're just expressing how they feel and we're taking it as an attack, for example, right? Another common example is becoming kind of overwhelmed on dates because someone said something, like, oh, they talked about their ex. They talked about their ex having a really good job. And you become anxious, you feel inferior, you feel, there's not a feeling of not good enough. I guess that's inferior, right? And then you become overwhelmed by the anxiety and the inferiority feeling. And you stop talking, you become overwhelmed and you shut down, right? Such an example. And then this is reactivity because they've just said something and then you've personalized it. Like, this is about me. Okay, this is about me. That means that I'm now comparing. It's another thing that happens in our mind. Comparison. You've compared yourself to their past partner and they're better. And now you feel like a piece of shit when none of this is actually happening. They've just expressed some stuff about their life, right? Example. Or another aspect of this reactivity is where like a minor issue gets blown up and kind of splits, like heated. Again, it's often because of defensiveness. Or let's use the lateness, for example. They say, oh, you're often late. And you're like, no, I'm not. I've always got a reason, I've got a reason for being late because this happened. And all they're doing is telling you a fact. Oh, no, I wasn't. I was early that time, suddenly you become defensive. And then maybe you fire back and go, but you're always late. You were late with my messages and da-da-da-da. And you see there that even that counterattack is often a thing that's bothered you in the past that you haven't talked about, right? When we talk about avoiding things due to rejection or conflict, you see how these are all really intermingled. So it can also be freezing, emotional shutdown, as I talked about, when there's tension, maybe there's a moment where there could be conflict, like you're having a conversation about what you're looking for in dating and you're so worried about saying the wrong thing or saying the thing that means that she doesn't want to be with you or see you again, that you start to shut down emotionally. You don't talk. You're worried that she's going to judge you. You're worried that you're not going to be good enough. You're worried she's going to abandon you if you tell the truth, whatever it is. So you shut down. Yeah. What does this cause? This causes emotional ups and downs in your dating life, in dates, in relationships, right? Things become unstable, emotionally unstable, and actually it creates drama. Especially shutting down creates drama. These things, reactivity creates drama, and we don't think we're creating a drama, but we are creating the drama, right? And it just means that you become a really difficult person to be with. Number 7, this is the last one. Really important. Mutual intention and shared meaning, right? This is how we can create a lot of really powerful connection where you create an intention, right, for even the dates you go on, and they have a shared meaning via discussing things, right? And also about the shared meaning and direction of where things are going, right? So like, it's one of the common problems is avoiding talking about what you want and where you want maybe dating someone to go, right? Saying things like, let's just see where it goes. Let's try and avoid the commitment, which is often because there's an uncomfortability with commitment and emotional stuff. Yeah. Avoiding of conversations about deeper values and deeper visions, because you don't get that shared meaning that brings you closer together, because you're still on these two islands, because you're too worried about, oh, if we talk about a vision, I talk about my vision for a relationship, she's going to think I want to marry her, or she's going to think that, you know, she's going to put herself in there and then I'm going to be locked in and forever I can't get out of it, when you still have agency just to say, hey, I don't want to date you anymore. You might avoid that because you don't want to have the conflict of having to say no to someone and then question you and feel uncomfortable. And we're back to some of the other points around communication and conflict and fears. And sometimes this one comes up because there's a hidden agenda you have of like maybe wanting closeness without any commitment, but don't want to say that. You don't want commitment at all, but you've lied, for instance. And what this causes in dating is these shallow connections. Shallow connections mismatches drama too. Because if someone keeps feeling like, you know, you're avoiding the question of where it's going to go, you're building this tension that you can both feel, right? Or you will definitely feel if you're trying to avoid it. And it just causes things to drift, or it causes like explosive conversations. And I know this because it's happened to me loads of times in dating.